Boy, you guys, this is just going to be a stream of consciousness episode. I've got nothing specific to bring, but I've been in a real funk lately. I just don't want to talk to anybody. It's like whatever is going on, I'm isolating so I don't hurt somebody's feelings. Okay? I don't want to come off the way I feel and alienate people. So I just been kind of sticking to myself. And as I've thought about it, this is the month in which my father died in his sleep back in 93. So here's the story. I'm sitting at my desk. I didn't see him that Father's Day. We didn't go. They lived about an hour and a half from where I live. So I was married at the time, and my husband and I agreed. He said, "Well, we won't go up there this weekend. Let's just wait till next weekend. We'll get off Friday and just bring something to change into, and then we'll just run up there after work." So that was the plan. I brought my little, back then it was the running suits, and hung it up and went to my desk. I'm on the phone doing a routine training with a retailer. And somebody says, "Linda, is your mother on the phone?" I'm thinking, well, just take a message. I'll call her back. Well, she says it's important. I never went back to that phone call because my mother was telling me, "Your father's died and he's in the bedroom." So I'm thinking it's 10 a freaking clock in the morning, and my dad was always up by 5. So I'm wondering how long she's been sitting in that room with my father having passed away. And she was disoriented. She says, "Well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." I said, "Mama, call the police and have them come out there." And I hung up the phone, called my husband. He dropped everything, left his office door unlocked and wide open, and he had a lot of electronic equipment in there, left his briefcase and everything, and we ran up north to see my mother. So the whole time I'm thinking, I've got to do for Mama, and I was in the frame of mind that whatever she wanted me to do, I was going to do. Okay? So we get up there, and we passed the police car on our way there. By then, it's got to be, like I said, if he was driving fast, it was at least an hour from the time that I left the office. And they were going back toward the city, if you call it that. Not a city, one stoplight town. Anyway, we get to Mama, and they've already ordered the ambulance, and Daddy was already gone by then. And it was just okay. So let's rewind. About a month and a half earlier, I saw my dad. I was over to my sister's house. They had come to Grand Rapids, and I kind of felt it was strange to walk in there and see Daddy in the bed. He was laying down, and so I knocked on the door and I said, "Hi, Daddy," and he mustered up a smile, but he had been losing a lot of weight and everything. And so about a week after that, my sister called and said, "Well, can you and you guys come over? Because I want to talk to you about something." So what she wanted to tell us is that Dad had taken a walk up over the hill behind her place, and he came back coughing up a lot of phlegm and everything, and she was concerned about it. Look, y'all, I'm so good at denial, and I'll tell you another story in a minute, but I'm so good at freaking denial that I just wasn't believing anything was going to happen to Daddy. So Mommy didn't want an autopsy. She didn't want him embalmed. I did what she asked me to do. My parents have always told us, look, don't lay me out in front of a bunch of people parading by. When I die, get me in the ground within 24 hours and call it a day. Because my parents, well, my mother specifically, thought that holding funerals was real barbaric, as she called it, and she thought that it was unnecessary pain for the family. So, again, I did what she told me to do. Daddy was in the ground within 24 hours. Now, my mother never visited that grave. She didn't make the burial because it was just me, my husband, and my son who were there when they lowered Daddy in the ground. So, we later had a memorial service for him. Now, what did that do to me? I really didn't grieve Daddy's passing. I really didn't. What I did is I started going back to school. So I go to school straight out of high school, and I went way far from home, okay? My first month I get pregnant. Didn't know how to tell Daddy, didn't know how to tell Daddy, didn't know how to. In fact, I went home for Thanksgiving that year, and I must have been showing because my grandmother, she could tell a woman was pregnant before that woman knew. It's just some kind of sixth sense that she had. So I don't know what the heck I was thinking going home pregnant. But Dad and I were riding along in the truck, and I was trying to muster up the nerve to tell him, and I just couldn't tell him. So I don't know how he finally found out, because that was the last Thanksgiving I went home while I was in college. And it was something about that kind of broke my relationship with Dad. Dad and I used to be real tight. Now, my little sister Susan would hang with him. Daddy was a carpenter and a brick mason. But she would hang with him and learn carpentry, how to lay bricks and everything. That was my thing, because no one is outside. And I was not going outside. I was not an outside person living up there in the boondocks. I do not like bugs. Don't be putting me out there with they behind. So she was that. And with me, it's like he would take me, out with his friends. In fact, I remember one time, now I'm in high school, I didn't drink anything, but he took me to this bar, and there were these two ladies there that sat with us and everything. And I noticed one of them acted kind of funny. And eventually they realized that I was his daughter and not his wife, right? And then they kind of relaxed. So I don't know what that was all about. Don't want to know, please. But anyway, so we would hang and everything, and we were kind of tight as I was growing up, as much as you would be when your dad is working double shifts and trying to support a family of a family of 7, and without a high school diploma. He always worked in factories and stuff, so we were pretty tight. But I felt like by me getting pregnant, it really broke that relationship. And I remember talking to him from when I was living in Chicago, and I don't know what had happened. He just turned on me. You'll never get him back. They had my son. He'll raise my son. You'll never get him back. Yada, yada, yada. I couldn't figure out what the heck just happened here. Editing Linda here. What happened was I would find out years later from my mother that my ex-husband had been calling and talking to them and telling them lies like I was selling drugs and all kind of crap. And because I wasn't talking up and I hadn't discussed anything with them, they believed him. And that's probably why Daddy said that. Let's get back to it. And I was so hurt that I just forget about it. I didn't try to explain nothing. It was like, whatever. I lived in Chicago for 11 years after I dropped out of college in my senior year, y'all. Can you figure that out? I was in this marriage with my first husband, and it was kind of domestic violence, and I kind of had to leave, to save my life. And that's where I got separated from my kids. I've talked about some of this in other videos. Anyway, after 11 years there, then I decided, after my second husband went to prison the first time, long story, I'll tell it eventually, I went back and moved back to Michigan. And that's when Dad and I began to kind of rebuild our relationship. And I told him one day that I wanted to go back to college because you guys, for years, I would have these nightmares. I was always running down the hall. I was always late to class or late for a test. And this just this recurring dream that I would have. And I didn't really connect it to the fact that I needed to finish school. But when I moved back up here, I remember one time I drove up north to see Dad, and it was like the old times. We held hands as we walked through the snow to our favorite restaurant in a little town, and it was just wonderful. I'm grateful to God that I had the opportunity to repair my relationship with my father before he passed. But what I did instead of grieving his death is I started going to school like a mad woman. I got into this accelerated program to finish my bachelor's. 6 months after I got that, I started on my master's, and it wasn't a good year after I got my master's that I started working on my doctorate the first time. And I just was go to school, go to school, go to school. It was almost like I was obsessed. It was like a mad woman. And on some level, I guess I was trying to prove something to a dead man. And that was how I dealt with the denial of grieving my dad. It would be 10 years before I actually cried over Dad. And I was sitting at work one day, and just all of a sudden just got this sadness. And I was crying and crying and crying and couldn't figure it out. And my boss sent me home, and later I realized, wait, this is a year that my father passed. So it was 10 years before I finally grieved his passing. Really strange. But anyway, no point, just saying. Now let's talk about my baby sister, Judith, who was exactly 10 years younger than I.